Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show for the last game of the season and our preview Raw Reaction show where we're playing Watford. It's a weird game because I say it's weird. We should sort of be used to this by now of Arsenal not really having anything to play for in these last games. We've kind of been used to that over the last few years, not in a positive way, certainly not. But it's in a sense, it's a relief that this season is done and it's over in regards to the league. It's been a really, 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 really tough season for Arsenal, finishing most likely 10th, maybe 9th if we're lucky. And we're playing Watford. So whilst it's a game that means nothing domestically, there are a couple of things that are important regarding this game. And there is a very, very key thing that can still happen for our opposition. And that is that Watford can be relegated if they fail to, I think, even if they fail to win this game or get a point. I think if Aston Villa, doesn't matter what Aston Villa do, if they lose this game, Watford are going to go down. So that is seemingly what is going to, I think maybe goal difference comes into it a little bit, but it's going to, they need to win this game effectively. If Villa get anything from their game, they're safe. So it's a weird one because there's things about Watford that I like. There's some players in that club that I like, but there is one player in that club that I don't like, that I don't like at all, and that is Troy Deeney. And there's very obvious reasons as to why. And obviously everyone who is up with social media and in keeping with Arsenal the last couple of seasons, there was an incident that happened a few seasons back where Watford beat us. There were some complaints from Arsenal players about it, and Troy Deeney turned around and says that Arsenal lacked cojones, is what he said. Basically, Arsenal lacked a set. So it went down about as well as you'd expect it to amongst the fan base. To be fair, there were some people that were like, yeah, no, he's 100% right. Arsenal don't have the balls to be able to do this. And whilst I kind of understand that trail of thought, it was just rude, wasn't it? it was a really baity, like, want to get a bite, winding Arsenal and Arsenal fans up in particular. And for that reason, well, it would be rather pleasurable to see Troy Deeney go down. Look, to show him where we've come in this time. We've got to the point where we can relegate you, and it'll be absolutely wonderful. So I know that obviously if that doesn't happen, I'm going to look like a right fraud. But shout out to Hugh Izzy for that. But I'm going to look like an absolute idiot if obviously we don't somehow send them down. But fingers crossed, we do. So that's the first narrative of the game. A lovely word to use regarding football matches. The other is, of course, this is the game before the FA Cup final, which is an interesting way of trying to think about how do you approach a game with no ultimate, other than positions, which of course have some financial impact, a fair financial impact, it's fair to say. And in comparison from that, you've got to think about resting players, or should you rest players ahead of the FA Cup final? And then you've got the other thing, which is, is this the time to experiment? Is this time to try and give people a chance to show that they should be playing in the final? Or should you be playing the team that you want to play in the final? And speaking of which, we're going to go straight into the team. I can see plenty of you in the chat box there. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in and throwing in your comments. We are going to go through plenty of those. Thank you. Millie says, full strength, Troy Deeney in the Championship is a gift we cannot let slip. Joe says, what Troy said is true. There is no balls in the sides. It might be true, but I still don't like someone else saying it about my club. Christopher Fugg says, let's walk all over them tomorrow and get a cojones celebration after we send them down. Avon Teddington says, remember our first game against Watford this season? The classy Watford fans were chanting, go back to where you came from. It's not just Troy. It's not just Troy. You're probably right. There's a lot to sort of digest about why sending them down would be rather pleasurable. Millie really doesn't like Watford. I want blood. Deeney must have asterisk next to his name. I mean, he is going to get marked. It's fair to say he's going to get marked by the Arsenal boys, you'd hope, and probably put out of this game, fingers crossed. So let's go into the lineup which I have selected, which should be coming. Here we go. So my thought is that I want to see the team play that is going to play in the FA Cup final. I want to get this team. Not only I want it to be strong to give us that chance to send Watford down, but I would like to see us line up with our strongest lineup and playing in a way which we want to practice ahead of the FA Cup final, because I think it's important. If you just take people out, I mean, the likes of Pepe didn't start against Villa, Xhaka didn't, Mainsley didn't play, Bellerin didn't play, he definitely didn't start. Tierney didn't start, and obviously for me, I feel that we should be going, and we've got a week's rest ahead of this game, ahead of the FA Cup final, and I think that's enough time to rest. So I would like us to go with a very, very strong lineup against Watford, and give them an absolute hiding and show what we can do ahead of the FA Cup final. You might turn around and say that, well, do we really want to show Chelsea what we're going to be lining up like? But at the end of the day, no matter who lines up tomorrow, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen in the FA Cup final. Arteta might decide to go very, very different. I just think that this is what we should do, personally. Max says, yeah, let's risk our best players that are garbage in a game that doesn't matter and risk them getting injured. Clever. I think it would be arguably less clever to get players that you want playing at the top of their game sitting on a bench for 2 weeks and not playing whatsoever. It's my view on that. I don't understand why you would want to keep them not hot, effectively. It's like an F1 car. You want to keep the tyres as warm as you can. And to do that, I think you need to play them. William Bell says, I'm loving seeing Saka as our newest number 7. 100% agree with you. It's great that he's got that new number. The Assembled says, Arsenal have roughly the same squad, so the soft underbelly still exists. It's a mentality thing, though, that you've got to hope that changes. Avon says, approve of Mainsley's inclusion. Christopher Fung says, Arteta said on Sky that he's fielding his strongest lineup tomorrow. Well, there you go. So clearly, if that's what Arteta wants to do, then fair play to him. Tiger T says, Mainsley at left back. Explain yourself, Tom. I don't need to explain myself, Tiger T. I would simply say go have a look at the Manchester City FA Cup semi-final highlights, and that will give you as much explanation as you need. We've got to try and deal with Willian on that side, most likely Pulisic on the other side, and so I think that Mainsley is best suited to do that. Jay says, hi again, mate. Isn't putting Saka at left wing back the better option? Possibly. I thought Saka was fairly poor against Aston Villa, if I'm being very, very honest. I didn't think he was good at all. Is it worth putting in a more offensive player there? I would shy away from it because I'd rather we had Mainsley's defensive qualities over Saka. I think Chelsea are probably going to dominate the game in the FA Cup final. And when other teams dominate the game in terms of possession and chances, we've dealt really well with that under Arteta at the moment. And so for that reason, I'd like us to go with a performer that did really well in that FA Cup semi-final. It's as simple as that for me. But Tiger T would love to see Saka over Mainsley all day long. Gary Hardy says, do you think 5 at the back would suit the game with the amount of possession we will have? And I'm assuming you're talking about the Watford game. I think it would, because it still gives you that sort of defensive platform to build from. And obviously, if they hit us on the counter, like we saw Aston Villa do, it gives you enough numbers at the back to deal with that, I feel, personally. Christopher Fung says, are we worried about Pulisic down the right against Bellerin and Holding? Yes, we are. Mustafi being out for the rest of the season is a massive, massive blow. And who would have thought we'd have been saying that a year ago, that losing Mustafi for the whole season is a huge blow, but it is. But if you remember the last time Holding played in an FA Cup final, he had one of the best performances in an Arsenal shirt we have ever seen alongside Per Mertesacker. And so for that reason, you have to turn around and say that he's got the potential, he's got the quality, it's there. We just have to unlock it. Max says we have created just 288 chances this season. 18th place, Watford has created 290. I don't get the logic behind signing more defenders, but this is Arsenal and their fans. I mean, signing more defenders, clearly we need to sign more defenders because the back line is not strong enough for an entire season. We can look at the improvements of Mustafi and David Luiz, But ultimately, we do need to be ruthless. We do need to improve. You just look at Liverpool. Liverpool needed to add to that spine. They did that with Alisson and Van Dijk and Fabinho, and Arsenal need to do something similar. I understand that we need to create more chances. I think that will happen from switching to a back five to a back four. And to be able to switch to a back four, you can't do that with these centre-backs. It's as simple as that, because they're just not good enough to play in a back four. And that's why you need to improve on doing that. Let's move on to Kitchener's comment. He says, would love to see a back four with Mainsley in the midfield. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, professionality, muting my mic, so you have to hear that. Absolute rubbish. But I would be hesitant to... I'd be hesitant to go to a back four in this game, just simply because I think we would leave ourselves very vulnerable to the attacking quality that's there. I just think that I just struggle to see how Chelsea wouldn't attack us blindly and create much better chances and leave us more vulnerable from a back four. Mainsley in a midfield three could work, but he would need to be very, very disciplined and almost disciplined to the point where it appears to be a back four. Avon says Mainsley could mark a man out of the game. He did that. Riyad Mahrez against City, and he'd be a lad to mark out Pulisic in the FA Cup final. He's got potential to do that. I don't know where Pulisic is going to play. Probably most likely left wing, Willian at right. So you most likely got a Willian up against Mainsley in that position if that's what we decide to go for. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Jay says, I'd agree if Chelsea weren't such a leaky team. Look at their goals conceded and how well Alba and Saka link up. I do agree with that. I think that our left-hand side can be really dangerous. I just can't get over making ourselves less defensively solid in a game that is so important to our season. So important to our season. I think that we have creativity in wide areas. Pepe adds a lot to that. I think Sabas can be creative in the middle. And Tierney, obviously, on that left-hand side in combination with Mainsley could be better. But we do struggle to create a decent amount from the left when Mainsley does play there. We saw that against Manchester City. His crossing was fairly poor. And for that reason, it is with a heavy sort of feeling of responsibility that I have to put Mainsley there for the defensive side of things, but feel slightly, not responsible, but slightly, what's the word, apprehensive, I suppose, about the potential that we've got going forward. So for me, I still would go with Mainsley at that left wing back role for how well he performed against Manchester City. Tiger T says, Tom, what Watford player would you like to see at Arsenal? It's a good question because there's a couple of players that are really good there, but I'm not sure if they get into our team. Like Ismail Sarr has had a decent season for Watford since arriving from, I believe it was Rennes. You've got Will Hughes there, and I don't know if you heard there was an interview on TalkSport with a very, very dishevelled Watford fan, and effectively he summed up the entire squad and said that Will Hughes is really the only one that can hold his head high, and maybe Arsenal could do with a technical Englishman in the middle of the park. Maybe not. So he's certainly got a lot of talent, that young guy. I think did he come from Derby originally? I think I saw him playing in a white shirt when he was younger, but he's got a lot of talent, and playing for Watford, I think that he will probably be poached if they do end up going down, which fingers crossed they do. William Gustafsson says, perfect opportunity for the fringe players to claim a spot for the top for the final. I mean, again, maybe from the bench, but I want to see a strong team against Watford. I want to see in as much as we can throw at this side to give us the best possible launch pad against Chelsea in the final. As I said, it's like a Formula One car. You've got to keep the tyres warm, otherwise you're gonna slide off the road when it comes to the corner. And when it comes down to the FA Cup final, that is our key turn in the race of getting to Europe. And I don't think you can go in there with too many restless legs and restless in the sense that obviously they've been sitting around for ages and you feel restless. Like, after when you've just done nothing all day and yet you still feel tired. I don't want that feeling amongst the players. And I know that training comes into it. I know they're training every single day, but nothing beats a match. And the best preparation for the season is always by playing friendlies. And the best preparation I feel for the FA Cup final is to play our players in the last game to give them their best option. I mean, you just saw, if I give an example of Theo Walcott had an amazing game against West Brom on the last day of the season. going into an FA Cup final, and he had a fantastic time in that FA Cup final. I believe it was the Villa one, in which obviously we won 4-0. But Theo Walcott claimed his place. I think it was over Olivier Giroud in that game with how well he played. So you could argue that that was a fringe player that did that, but it shows that the impact of that last game of the season, whether it means something or it doesn't, does have an impact on the form of players going into that last game. If you look at Lacazette, for instance, he's just had a game against Villa where he wasn't great. His confidence isn't as high as it possibly could be. So giving Lacazette the opportunity to play, possibly get a couple of goals against Watford, fingers crossed, that gives him that added, that added buffer and bonus to really go for it against Chelsea. So I think there is just too much emphasis around trying to give these players confidence, for me, that justifies that decision. But William does bring up the counterpoint being, imagine if a key player got injured. But the thing is that you think about these things in, like, it's always going to be the benefit of hindsight. Oh, we hadn't have played him, yeah, and it will look stupid. But ultimately, what if someone doesn't get injured, has an amazing game, what if Lacazette does amazing, puts himself in really good form, goes into the final and plays really well again? And you might say if he hadn't have played in that last game of the season, he might not have been in that good a form for the final. So it's a lot of ifs and buts when it comes to these things. Players could get injured in training, like we saw with Gabriel Martinelli. Anything can happen ahead of that final. And I just feel it's important to keep the tyres warm ahead of that game. I know I've used that analogy like 3 times now, but I just think it works. I just think it's the best representation I can come up with. Lingo Stars says, we got our Arsenal back. We got our Arsenal back. I mean, 10th place isn't, I wouldn't say we've got our Arsenal back just yet. But I feel like we're on the way there for 100%. Omar says, Ala Wenger, should Arteta give a debut to one of the young guns? I wouldn't mind towards the end of the game. Say if we're like 3-0 up in the game or whatever and we're comfortable, giving the likes of Smith a chance, maybe giving Zach Medley a chance, which everyone talks about Zach Medley when, to be honest, I don't even know really how good he is in comparison to our current centre-back. So, but if you can give some youngsters a chance to play at the end of the game, then yeah, go for it. I think it's always a great thing to see youngsters play. But ultimately this season we've seen Martinelli get more chances than we ever thought he would. Saka have an amazing breakthrough season. Nelson get more minutes on the pitch. And Nketiah come back from a Leeds loan and get more minutes on the pitch. It's not like we've not fielded young players in the side this season. We've been absolutely like spoiled with the amount of young players that have come through the system or have been signed at a very young age and brought into this Arsenal first team. So yeah, it'd be great to give some more debuts to young kids, but I still think we've done that exceptionally well this season already. Christopher Fung says, Tom, any ideas on how to break down the defensive block? I'm assuming regarding the Watford game, which you'd assume that Watford might do that. But the thing is that Watford are going into this game having to attack. They have to do something to win this game. And I think that will leave open spaces. Whereas in the FA Cup final, I don't expect Chelsea to be as maybe all-out attack as what we might see from Watford tomorrow. So how do you break down a low block? Well, if we come up against a low block, the way that you do it is you do it with patience and you do it with passing the ball calmly and comprehensively and finding the gaps and finding the right time to make those creative passes. You've also got to make sure that you're disciplined in your position so that if you lose the ball and you're then susceptible to a counter-attack, that you've got enough cover behind the players that have pushed forwards. Counter-attacking is going to be really key. You've got to draw that defensive block out and then hit them on the counter as much as possible if that's the way that they want to play. So it's really tough, especially when you play without 3 midfielders, but obviously the structure of our defence and the way that we struggle in that area is obviously going to have an impact on how effective we can be at beating that low block. Laura says, Danny Welbeck returning. How do you look at that? Fair play to the guy. I liked him at Arsenal. Yeah, he wasn't an amazing player. But if you're going to go in an FA Cup semi-final to your old ground, being Old Trafford, score against Manchester United and put us into the final, to me, I will remember him very, very fondly for that. I loved his hat-trick against Galatasaray in his first season, I think it was. It was a really odd signing when we got him, but he just sort of added a different dynamic. The injuries absolutely ravaged his career. Maybe if he wasn't injured as much as he was, he could have had an okay, longer-term career at Arsenal, but it just wasn't possible to invest the wages that would have been necessary to keep him at the club with the inconsistency of the amount of fitness he had in those games. But him returning, obviously I don't want him to score. It's tough because you don't want to see him get relegated, but for me, sometimes you just have to put those sort of things aside, especially when you got the chance to relegate Troy Deeney. And with that, that is where we're going to finish off today's show. If you've enjoyed it, please make sure you drop a like on the video. This isn't going to be your only video of the day, because later on today, we're going to have a tactical breakdown looking into some interesting stuff regarding Dani Ceballos, because if you saw earlier when I put a poll out on Twitter and on YouTube, and the collective votes together have seen a Dani Ceballos edge it ever so slightly. But don't worry, those of you that did vote for Douglas Luiz, because that is going to be the plan for an upcoming video tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Yeah, probably tomorrow before the games come out, to do something on Douglas Luiz. So there's definitely going to be a video on that. And if the Willian rumours do just increase, we will of course have to do a tactical breakdown on him as well. So please make sure you hit that notification bell. I'm expecting the show to go out around 6 p.m. UK time tonight. So make sure you've got those notifications turned on so you can hit that video as soon as it drops live. If you're new to the channel, please make sure you go check out some of our older videos. We've covered a load of players. We obviously react to every single game, and we've got some really exciting stuff coming out next week. Thank you to the members that have made everything that is going to drop next week possible. Genuinely appreciate all of the support, and it has really helped to turn what is just a YouTube channel into very, very soon a lot more. And there's 2 amazing interviews next week that are planned that I'm really, really buzzing for. One of them in particular is an absolute honor to be able to interview this person about their book, and that might give you a little bit of a clue. And then the next one is a very exciting interview with someone who used to be very, very high up in a football club that which one of our loanees was at this season. I'm not going to say anything more than that at this stage, but I'm very, very excited. Let's finish off the show, as Christopher Fung says, with a prediction. I always forget the prediction. I'm going for, in this game, a 3-1 win. Arguably, we might see Arsenal go 1-0 down in this game, but I'm going for a 3-1 win. I'm really looking forward to see the lineup that Arteta decides to put out. I hope it's a strong one. I hope it's one that should tell us a bit more about what we can expect in the final. But other than that, it's been a real pleasure to speak to all of you. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.